Properties of a system. So all measurable characteristics which are used to define the state of the system are known as the properties. So how to define these properties? All measurable characteristics, the characteristics or the features which you can measure actually. So those things which you can measure in order to define the state of the system are known as properties. Broadly speaking, we can classify properties under two categories. We have extensive properties and intensive properties. Extensive properties are those properties which depend on the size and mass of the system. On the other hand, your intensive properties are the properties which are independent of size or mass of the system. Now I have prepared a list for you, that is list of extensive and intensive properties, and it is quite suggested that please note down all these points in your notebook, because this will help you in identifying which is an extensive and which is an intensive, and mostly the questions do come up from here. So please note down all this. So examples of your extensive properties are your volume, energy, which means all forms of energy like internal energy, kinetic energy, potential energy, mass, enthalpy, entropy, number of moles, Gibbs energy, length, mass, particle number, then momentum, magnetic moment, electrical discharge, weight. So all these 17 properties are your, so this mass has been repeated. So all these 16 properties are basically considered under your extensive properties, and intensive properties include your pressure, temperature, density, viscosity, thermal conductivity, velocity, hardness, refractive index, composition, surface tension, chemical potential, concentration, then specific gravity, molecular weight, ductility, elasticity, electrical resistivity, magnetic field, magnetization, malleability, melting point, boiling point, normality, molar fraction, volume fraction, mass fraction, molality, molarity, molar absorptivity, and all specific quantities. So what are specific quantities? The quantities which are taken per unit of something. It could be per unit mass, per unit weight, per unit length, anything. So just like an example out here, we have got specific volume, which is volume per unit mass, and one thing more. So these specific quantities are shown and represented with small letters. So here we have volume, which is shown with capital V, and specific volume is shown with small v. Similarly, we have specific internal energy, which is internal energy by mass. Internal energy is shown with capital U, and specific internal energy is shown with a small u. Then we have specific enthalpy and so on, specific entropy and so on. Okay, now it is suggested that if you want to remember all these 16 points in extensive and 30 points in intensive, well and good. Otherwise, if you are not comfortable with that, please, I'm suggesting you please remember at least the extensive list, such that anything apart from the list you can consider this to be intensive properties. Now there are certain important note points that you need to keep in mind. First is that all specific quantities are considered as your intensive properties, and the ratio of two extensive properties is always an intensive property. So just like we have density, so many people confuse with density whether it is extensive or intensive. So density, we know that it is mass per unit volume. So what people will do is they will say that okay, so density is depending on mass, so that means we can consider this to be extensive property. But what I told you, that the ratio of two extensive properties is always an intensive property. So you can see here mass is an extensive property, volume is an extensive property, so ratio of these two extensive properties will always be intensive properties. I hope you got a very good clear idea of your extensive and intensive properties and what a property is. See you in the next lecture. Till then, bye.